On only 2 previous occasions have I attempted myself to record the details of those trifling mysteries with which I remain associated in the public imagination. Occasioned by the absence of an old friend, these accounts of mine are not, I am told, considered to be among the finest of their kind, being altogether too clinical and scientific in approach, and lacking altogether that warmth and generosity of spirit with which the doctor was able to imbue his own chronicles. I had thought never again to try to emulate his example, but an event which occurred 2 days ago has rendered just such an undertaking essential. This last story, then, I set down not only in the absence of my friend, but, it grieves me to confess it, in his honour. These words I write in memory of him. The event which led to the tragedy began, as you will doubtless recall, just over 2 weeks ago, late one winter evening. No. Poor Watson was too often regrettably imprecise in the matters of chronology. I intend upon such issues to be exact. The date was Tuesday, the 11th of December, in the year of 1919. London had, until lately, been covered by a thick carapace of snow, but the ice had melted almost completely the previous day, leaving only unsightly grey-brown patches of dirt, which lent the streets a disagreeably piebald appearance. I had arrived in the city some hours earlier, coming up on the 12:16 from Lewes, the proximate station to my country villa, where I continue to spend much time since my abdication from professional practice. I had business to conduct in Whitehall, and it was not until 10:30 that I presented myself at an elegant Pimlico townhouse. No lights were to be seen within. Nonetheless, I had no hesitation in knocking several times upon the front door, for I had the pleasure of knowing the house's owner better than any other human being.
Now what the devil do you... Holmes, whatever are you doing here?
I came to see you, dear fellow. You said, did you not, upon your nuptial day, that I should never have any hesitation in presenting myself upon your doorstep?
Yes. I had hoped you might call ahead.
Well, then you have my apologies. I have, I fear, been heedless of convention. I spend so much of my time in the company of bees, you see, and their society does not place so profound an emphasis as does ours upon the niceties of etiquette.
It's wonderful to see you, Holmes. Won't you come in? I'm afraid the house is abed, so I can't offer you supper. A drink, though, and a pipe.
I have no desire to intrude. Yet it would be a great pleasure to smoke with you again. And there is something of the gravest import which I must convey to you at the earliest possible opportunity.
I hadn't imagined this was purely a social visit. Come in, old man. Your very good health, sir.
And yours also. Your wife is well?
She is.
And you are also, I trust, quite happy?
I have been most fortunate to find companionship again at such an age. How are Martha and the house? Your bees?
All is peacefulness and harmony in Sussex. Yet I fear that it is not necessarily so beyond her borders. An old evil is abroad in the world.
There is always evil, Holmes.
Tell me, did you see yesterday's Pall Mall Gazette?
We don't take it, I'm afraid. A little vulgar for our tastes. I'm surprised you read it yourself.
I read all of the daily papers, even now. No matter, I have the edition in question in my case. Would you mind running your eye over this article?
I'm sorry, but I'll have to find my glasses.
Oh, no need to apologize. I, too, have need of spectacles. Occasionally.
Right. Now. Well, this seems to be something to do with the first government of Covitania. Covitania? One of those new European countries, yes? All come about through some revolution or other.
Covitania lies to the east of our continent. It is a neighbour of what they now call Czechoslovakia, but which, to you and I, shall ever, I fancy, be Bohemia.
Yes. Yes, I think I've heard something of it. So, looks as though this new democratic government of theirs prides itself on modernity, education for all, some sort of national fund for orphans, fresh running water in every home. It's progress.
I'm not so certain that it is. Pray examine the accompanying photograph.
Well, that's their president, isn't it? Plump little chap called... How do you pronounce it?
Klitzelman Blench.
Well, I can't see anything remarkable in it, Holmes. There's Blench sitting at his desk and a row of fellows behind him. They're his cabinet, I suppose.
They are, but they are not exclusively fellows. Look closer.
Good Lord. There's a woman with them.
Closer still.
I'm starting to have a horrible suspicion as to what you're driving at. Is it truly her?
Undoubtedly.
I'd hoped we'd seen the last of her.
No. It would seem that the woman that we knew as Mrs. Edgar Kirbishley is alive and well, and serving in some shadowy capacity the new government of an emergent European power.
Have you any idea what she might be doing there?
My sources tell me that since the war, she's become a kind of specialist in espionage. Her expertise is available to the highest bidder, and it is my understanding that her fees are far from inexpensive. I have detected her hand at work in several recent international incidents.
It seems to me the lady's rather put her head above the parapet. The photograph gives her location. Shouldn't be too difficult to send a party to Covitania and bring her back for trial. For the business with Ismay, at least. Have you brought this to the attention of Mycroft?
Officially, my brother has retired, though he has not relinquished all influence. I spent some hours with him this afternoon. Alas, he tells me that any direct attempt to prize Mrs. Kirbishley from her Covitanian birth will not be permitted by our government. Relations with the new Europe are considered to be at a delicate stage, and any action which might serve to antagonize another sovereign nation is, I have been informed in the strongest possible terms, to be avoided.
So your hands are tied. Pity.
Mycroft's injunction applies only to an official approach. I have been given tacit authority, to be denied, of course, in the event of capture or exposure, to make a sortie into Covitania. Mycroft has arranged for me to travel to this new country in the person of an ambassador and to investigate the whereabouts of Kirbishley myself.
Well, I wish you the very best of luck with it. Now, I'm afraid it's late and I'm rather tired. One of the guest bedrooms is made up. We'll talk some more in the morning. I'm sure my wife would like to see you.
I'm in no mood for sleep. I shall remain here and smoke, if that's acceptable to you.
Quite acceptable. Though if you're going to smoke that awful shag tobacco of yours, would you be kind enough to open the window? My wife can't abide the smell.
My dear Watson.
Yes?
Would you come with me to Covitania?
I feel a little old nowadays.
It will only be a matter of reconnaissance. We should be back within the week. Perhaps if we are to encounter difficulties within 10 days, we shall certainly be home by Christmas.
I'll need to consult my wife.
But in principle, you agree?
I shall speak to her. You may have my answer at breakfast.
I would feel safer, I think, were you to be at my side.
I must go to bed, Holmes.
You will need to rest as fully as you can. There may be trials ahead of us.
Good night, Holmes.
Good night, old fellow. After Watson had left, I sat and smoked a while, considering the intentions of the woman whom we knew as Kirbishley and the significance of this new country, Covitania. I have never been a believer in precognition, yet it seemed to me, at least in those watches of the night, that I could detect the hand in this affair of some wholly malignant intelligence. I was deep in such thoughts when I heard from somewhere overhead the sound of raised voices, one male and one female. It occurred to me that I might, unwittingly, have been the cause of some marital disharmony. Before rejecting the evidence of such a supposition as being wholly insubstantial, I returned to my meditations. In this manner, I passed the next 6 hours. Early in the morning, I partook of an excellent breakfast. Afterwards, I smoked the first cigarette of the day and drank a cup of coffee as I waited for Watson to descend. At length, I heard his step, and his alone, upon the stair.
Good morning.
Watson! Your wife is not with you?
She has a slight head cold and intends to rise later in the day.
What a pity. I had hoped to see her. Now, would it be too indelicate of me to ask whether you...
I have already packed. She doesn't approve, but I've told her that the sooner we leave, the sooner I'll be back.
I knew I could rely upon you.
But Holmes?
Yes?
We will be back for Christmas, won't we?
Of course we shall. You have my word on it. I can scarcely remember a more pleasant few days in the company of Watson than those of our journey to Covitania. The doctor was in excellent spirits. The appeal of matrimony is one that will forever elude me, but in his case, I believe it to have been his natural state. He pines when he is not in it. We spoke freely and wandered over the terrain of our career, touching here and there on particular successes, toasting old victories, and laughing anew about those instances which had, in the past, enjoined us to mirth. Of those darker cases, of Tess Dorno, of the Hinderclays, and of Wary, we did not speak at all, though they were present, submerged beneath the surface of our conversation. We crossed the Channel at Dover and passed by rail through France and Germany, entering Austria on the morning of Friday the 15th. There, we changed trains for the last time, boarding an express which would take us directly to the terminus at Heeken, the capital of Covitania. Having left our few belongings in our cabin, we had elected to go directly to the dining carriage. Watson was hungry. I was not. Nonetheless, I was content to sit with him, talk some more, and perhaps to take a glass or two.
Holmes!
Watson, I fear we haven't much time. Herr Greaser could give me only 5 minutes at the most. I trust you're being treated well?
No complaints. I didn't do it, of course.
The possibility had not occurred to me for a moment, but you must tell me everything.
I've been a fool. Not for the first time. I couldn't sleep, you see. Confounded rattle of the wheels on the track, so I decided to go for a walk. I suppose I'd considered the possibility of confronting the Kirbishley woman. I knew where she was staying. She'd made a point of telling us last night. When I got there, the door was open. I could tell something was wrong. The light was on, and I was sure I saw a patch of blood upon the floor. I stepped inside. Kirbishley was on the bed, unrecognizable, her throat cut from side to side. A lot of blood. I'd only been in there a few moments when that greaser fellow arrived, cried murder, put me under arrest, and started the most almighty hue and cry. I've been told that since the murder took place on Austrian soil, I'll have to be given over to the authorities in Vienna on our return journey.
This is a monstrous injustice.
It's my own fault. I blundered into the bear trap. Ought to have known better at my age.
That is enough now. Herr Holmes, Step away from the prisoner.
I will resolve this, Watson. Have no fear.
You should go on to Heacon. I wonder if someone hasn't gone to a great deal of trouble just to dissuade you from reaching it.
Enough, Herr Holmes. You must leave.
I'll see you again, Watson, early in the morning.
Don't worry about me.
All right, Mr. Greaser. There is no need to lay hands upon me. Thank you. Goodbye, Watson.
Goodbye, Holmes.
I need to examine the scene of the murder.
This is out of the question. You have no authority here. This is no longer the age of the amateur. Return to your compartment. I will put a guard outside to ensure that you stay within.
What are you hiding, Mr. Greaser?
Enough, Herr Holmes. You have said enough.
Greaser returned me to my carriage, and for the whole of the night there was a guard outside. I remained within, smoking and thinking and endeavouring to devise a means by which my friend and I might be liberated. It had been light for 1¼ hours when the train arrived at the terminal in Heacon. All of the passengers disembarked save for 2. The doctor in his prison cell and I, who had resolved to return with him to Austria and devote myself to the clearing of his name. Soon I was ejected from my carriage by a charwoman. Seeing no sign of my jailer, I walked to the dining car and ordered myself breakfast, which remained quite untouched upon my plate. After an hour, the train filled up with a fresh consignment of passengers. 30 minutes later, the engine roared into life, and we began to pull out of the station. I thought at that moment that this might represent my sole glimpse of the new nation of Covitania. If a country may be judged by the condition of its railway stations, then all the evidence with which I was presented seemed to me to suggest that the place was worthy of its reputation as a beacon of modernity. Well-wishers lined the gleaming platform to wave us away. So preoccupied was I with the freeing of Dr. Watson that I very nearly missed what was before me. For on the other side of the glass, standing demurely beneath a parasol of green and white, stood the familiar figure of Mrs. Edgar Curbishley. Her left hand was raised as if in farewell, and there was upon her lips a coy and teasing smile. She was there for but an instant before the train, gathering pace, sped out of the station, and the murderess disappeared. I leapt to my feet and ran out of the dining car, through the train, down towards the place where poor Watson was being kept, and hammered upon the door. Greaser arrived almost at once.
Herr Holmes, this is undignified. I had always been assured that you were a man of no emotion. I was told that you put your brain in front of your heart.
Herr Greaser, I require your absolute attention. No murder has been committed here. I have seen the victim myself, standing upon the station platform and waving at me.
Events have been hard on you, Herr Holmes, and you have my sympathies. Yet you must understand what you say is impossible.
I saw the lady as clearly as I see you now. I'm in no doubt that this entire affair is a fabrication, and that it has been concocted purely to deter me from reaching Covitania.
If you will forgive me for saying, that sounds a little vague.
More than that, I contend that you, sir, are an intimate part of this, and that you have colluded with the lady to stage this absurd production.
Now you are making accusations which it would be wiser for you not to make.
Confess. Make a clean breast of it, and I'll do what I can to persuade the police to be lenient.
You can promise nothing. You are an old man in a foreign country.
Very well. You've made your choice. I shall take particular care when I give my evidence to implicate you fully in this spiteful deception.
I have heard enough. It is now my opinion that you have made remarks of a threatening kind, and so, as it is my right, I move to make a citizen's arrest. I will open the door to that cell, Herr Holmes, and you must step inside. We will keep both of you there until such time as we can hand you over to the Viennese authorities.
I see that you're quite prepared to stoop to theft, Herr Greaser. That is Watson's revolver that you are holding, is it not?
I confiscated it, yes.
I presume you're acting in this manner for money. Your daughter would not wish you to do the things that you have done for her sake.
With respect, Herr Holmes, you know nothing at all about my daughter. Here is the key. Open the door and step inside.
Holmes?
Good morning, Watson. I fear I am the bearer of bad news.
Still, we've been in tighter spots.
I've just seen Mrs. Kirbishley, alive and well.
What?
She stood smiling upon the platform. This whole business has been typical of her. Stagecraft and illusion.
She really is determined that we don't reach Covertania.
So it would seem. And here we are, speeding back in the opposite direction.
Not necessarily.
Oh?
I've not been idle in the night. I've spent my time weakening the structure of the carriage wall. By now, a single determined kick should suffice.
Watson, yet again you astonish me.
The train has yet to reach full speed. If we're quick and sufficiently bold, we should survive the fall. Stand back, dear fellow, and prepare to jump.
Never before had Watson impressed as he did then. With that cool determination about which he has been unduly modest in his own accounts, he ran at the wall of the carriage. In the event, it took 4 decisive kicks to make a gap through which a man might jump. This done, he looked back at me, nodded once, and, without speaking, hurled himself from the train. An instant later, I did the same. We fell a few yards apart along a grass siding. Though we suffered bruises and a number of minor abrasions, we could not have hoped for a better landing. And despite the severity of our predicament, we found ourselves laughing at its absurdity.
Which way to Heacon, Holmes?
I should say that direction. Around 4 miles. Are you prepared for a trek?
I can think of few things more pleasant. You lead the way. I must say, I rather like what I've seen of Covertania so far. Reminds me a little of Norfolk.
I shall be careful, Watson. You remember, do you not, my old injunction about the countryside?
You said that the lowest and vilest alleys in London do not present a more dreadful record of sin than does the smiling and beautiful countryside.
At least that is how you quoted me. In reality, I fear I did not phrase it so prettily.
You do yourself a disservice.
And you are too modest. We walked together in this thoroughly amiable manner for a further 9 minutes, until my friend finally noticed what I had seen the second that we had fallen from the train.
Holmes, I think I may be going mad.
On the contrary, I can think of no saner man than you.
I'm not altogether certain that I can credit the evidence of my senses.
Tell me.
These fields, which stretch as far as the eye can see. The crop that seems to be growing in them.
Yes?
Unless I'm very much mistaken, it is, isn't it? The blue flower. First of Afghanistan, and then of Winflet.
You are not mistaken. Though if you look more closely, you will see that it is a subtly different strain, altered by some horticultural process.
Well, how can it be here? Growing it in such quantity?
These are deep waters. I have no answers at present.
You must have theories.
You know my methods. I should prefer not to present my hypothesis until it is fully formed.
You remember what they called it, don't you, Holmes? The tribe. Look about us now. We're surrounded on all sides by despair.
Our mood grew grimmer after that, and we walked much of the rest of the way in silence. It was shortly after noon when we passed the boundaries of the city, and past 1 by the time we presented ourselves at the British Embassy. Heacon itself seemed a handsome enough place. It had not escaped the flames of war unscathed, yet there were many signs of building and reconstruction. This, we were surely intended to believe, was to be a city of the future, one of shining towers and minarets, of wide, clean thoroughfares, of equality, freedom, fairness, and wealth. It was curious, however, to see so few people there. The streets were empty, doors locked, and windows shaded. From time to time we saw a gaunt-looking man or woman walking alone, occasionally a car or a closed carriage, but there was nothing like the numbers one would have expected. We felt as must the Egyptians have felt as they walked the streets of their cities and saw the marks of blood upon each Israelite door. The British Embassy, however, was well staffed. Some time was spent in the explanation of our late arrival. A hotel had been found for us, and I took a calculated risk that we would be quite safe there. I felt, correctly, that our opponents would not make their move until the following day. I had some business to conduct at the embassy on behalf of my brother, and so Watson went on ahead to the hotel. It was with no small amount of relief that I discovered him at 6:15 that evening, nursing a whisky and soda in the saloon bar. Besides the bartender, a bloodshot, unshaven, skittish man, he was the only person in the room. "There you are, Watson. Why, you look quite at home."
I don't deny it. It's a thoroughly pleasant place, if rather on the deserted side. Not sure I can have seen more than 2 other guests in the time I've been here. Still, you must thank your brother for arranging it.
I shall certainly do so. His name seems to be much honoured by our friends at the embassy. It smoothed our way to a remarkable meeting in the morning.
What do you mean?
We're to meet the President, Tlitzelman Blench himself. They'll send a car for us at 9.
That's remarkable. But can it really be so easy?
Of course, the apparent ease of the thing betrays its true purpose. I've no doubt that the appointment is a trap.
But we're to walk into it all the same.
I know of no faster method to obtain the truth, though I understand entirely if you would prefer to remain here or board a train home at the earliest opportunity. You have your wife to think of, while I have only my bees.
Nonsense, Holmes. You know I won't hesitate to help if I can. My wife understood that when she married me. Now, why don't I get you a drink and order us some food? I've had some thoughts about the blue flower and why it might be growing here. I've been thinking of the day I went to that peculiar institution which called itself the Solomon...
No, my dear Watson. Let us by all means take food and drink, but let us not talk of the case. Not tonight. I should prefer to speak of old times.
Holmes? Whatever the nature of this business, I have no doubt that you'll solve it and bring the wrongdoers to justice. You need not talk as though supper tonight may be our last.
You must forgive me. Old age has made me melancholy. Now, let us order and talk of happier things. I have always abhorred superstition. Yet something seemed to tell me that the meal would indeed be the last that we were permitted to share. The wine was acceptable, the food indifferent, yet the company was first-rate. In the morning I rose early, dressed as punctiliously as I was able, and went down to breakfast to wait for Watson. The old soldier was there before me, with his boots polished, and an expression upon his face which informed me that he too felt the same intimation of disaster. We ate little and spoke hardly at all. Afterwards, we walked outside and smoked together before the car arrived.
And there's the car. They've sent us a real beauty, too.
A vulgar display of wealth, that is all.
Come on, Holmes. Are you ready?
Yes. Yes, I'm ready. Our car was driven by a wordless, unsmiling man in a uniform of velveteen and braid. His hands shook upon the wheel. Watson and I took our places and rode through the city, which seemed as empty and unpeopled as it had the day before. At last we reached a large, rather garish building, whose architecture appeared to have been inspired in equal measures by the Winter Palace and the Brighton Pavilion. It struck an oddly discordant note, that antiquated monument in this city of the new. We alighted, and our chauffeur escorted us up the steps into a kind of exalted vestibule, then through an echoing hall and up a further flight of stairs. At last he indicated that we should walk before him into a well-appointed library, its walls lined with books. A long table had been set out, behind which sat two familiar figures. The first was that of Schlitzelman Blench, the new president of Covitania. The second was our old acquaintance, Mrs. Edgar Kirbishley.
Gentlemen, what a treat to see you again so soon. I don't believe you've met my husband. Say hello to my friends, Tlitzy.
I am saying hello to both of you gentlemen. I am welcoming you to my country, the most contemporary and uninhibited land of Covitania.
Madam, you've outdone yourself. Even for you, this is thoroughly grotesque.
I would thank you not to show such disrespect, Doctor.
Ignore them. This is more illusion. Nothing here is what it seems. Yet the truth is visible for those who have the wit to see it. You may come out now, sir. I know that you are watching us.
Poor Mr. Holmes.
Poor, wretched fellow.
I think that your ordeal must have disrupted the workings of that singular mind. There's nobody here but us. Tlitzy and I, you and your brave doctor.
Nobody is being here, sir. Nobody is being here but us four.
Holmes, what are you doing?
Someone was with you, Mr. and Mrs. Blench, until very recently. There is an excitation in the atmosphere, a faint smell that does not belong to either of you, something sweeter and more ancient. My senses are not entirely decayed. Even from this distance, I can perceive a faint line in the rug against the bookcase behind you, a sign of the false door that is concealed in those shelves and the priest's hole which lies beyond it. So I would say to you again, sir, that I know you are here, that I know you are watching, and that I think it would be only polite for you, at long last, to show yourself. It gives me no pleasure at all to inform you now that I was correct in every detail. There was, as I had suggested, a concealed door in that bookcase. At my summons, it swung open, and a remarkable man stepped into the light to greet us.
Sherlock Holmes, how pleasant it is to make your acquaintance at last. And Dr. Watson, how fine to see you again.
No, this is impossible. Holmes, who is this man?
He is precisely whom you perceive him to be.
It can't be. He's still young. He's not aged a day since Afghanistan. Surely it must be his son, his grandson.
No, Watson. This is Christopher Thrale.
Look at the doctor's face, darling. Isn't it a picture?
Yes, my love. An oil painting.
Your friend is quite correct, Doctor. I am all that I appear.
You died. I saw your corpse.
The blue flower restored me. It allowed me to sink into a condition almost indistinguishable from death before it set to work in healing me. And not only in healing me, but in making me better than I was before. Stronger, faster. It preserved me where you have grown old, Doctor. I am still just as I was.
Impossible.
He speaks the truth.
How long have you known?
Not long at all. I have suspected for many years, though I lacked proof until now. My case is almost complete. There are only a few links missing in the chain.
You can ask me anything you like. I know it would be a comfort for you to have some details confirmed before the end.
We've met before, sir, have we not?
We have, though we were not introduced.
You were the itinerant, were you not, past whom the doctor and I stumbled in our pursuit of Inspector Wherry?
I ought to have known my disguise would never have fooled you, Mr. Holmes, though I imagine that, like my blonde wig earlier in that affair, it was sufficient to gull the doctor.
And you shot Wherry yourself, but made it look like suicide? I knew I should have examined the body.
Oh, yes. Yes, I suppose I must have done as you say. There are times when the chronology of things becomes a little tangled in my mind. The flower, you see, affects the workings of memory, but only in humans. The animal kingdom seems quite unaffected. Now, was there any other question you wished to ask?
Only your name?
You know my name, sir.
Not the name you gave to the doctor, not the name you took in Afghanistan. The name your father gave you.
Oh, that. Him.
Holmes, what's the meaning of this?
Everything will become clear. For Christopher Thrale was born with another name. Isn't that so, Mr. Bartley Gower?
Very good, Mr. Holmes.
He is very good, isn't he, my sweet?
Very good, very good.
Bartley Gower?
It was my father's affectation. I've always preferred the name of my ancestors, a combination of the flail and to thresh.
Do you see now, Watson?
I confess I'm completely in the dark. The day seems to have taken on the quality of a nightmare.
Why don't we walk together a while, the three of us? Now, there's something I'd like you to see. Mr. and Mrs. Blench.
Yes, sir.
You may leave us. I wish us to meet again at the plant in, shall we say, an hour.
I can meet Thrale, but I cannot tarry. I have an appointment elsewhere.
I have paid you well, madam. Do not think to dictate terms to me. Be there in an hour, and bring your pudgy lover with you.
Very well, if that's what you wish.
It is. Now then, gentlemen, would you care for a stroll?
And so the three of us walked together through that gaudy building. Thrale's story was a fantastic one, and though connections between certain seemingly disparate events had suggested themselves to me down the years, I encouraged him to provide us with as full a narrative as possible, for I suspected that when his tale was told, it would mean death for the doctor and me.
I was born in the same year as you, Mr. Holmes, though one would hardly think it to look at us. My father, as you have already correctly stated, was the man whom you knew as Winchester Bartley Gower. Celebrated as a philanthropist, his money, though he tried to hide it, was derived primarily from the production and sale of weaponry. I was brought up from the first in the family business and given the best education that money could buy. It was always the old man's hope that I'd be accepted by high society where he had not. I do believe he might have died happy had I been taken in by Boodles or Whites. Shortly after I came down from university, the Second Anglo-Afghan War broke out, and my father spied opportunity. The British forces were armed by us, of course, yet my father saw the possibility of arming the Afghans also, and I, being fluent in Persian and able to pass freely through that desert land, was dispatched like some commercial missionary to make contact with the rebel tribes and to see what I could sell them. You think that's cynical, Doctor?
I think it abhorrent.
Well, I would tend to agree with you. But my father was a cynical man. He was adept at using people, was he not, Mr. Holmes?
Won't you go on with your story, Mr. Thrale? It really is most engrossing.
The undertaking was misguided. The tribes proved suspicious and recalcitrant. They declared jihad, and no Christian was safe in their midst. I was run out of Kabul, chased from Kandahar, and so it was, Doctor, that I came to the plain where you found me, to that curious patch of desert where the blue flower grows. The tribe of that region were unique, yet they welcomed me. My arrival, they said, had been foretold. I was to be a prophet of their strange and terrible religion. It was they who introduced me to despair, they who showed me its properties. One day, a raiding party from another tribe came to the valley, and I was grievously wounded. That is how you found me, Doctor. And I should like to thank you again for your kindness.
I did what I thought was right.
Indeed. Yet I remain grateful to you for bringing that parcel to England in particular. Before the attack, I had corresponded with my father. I told him of the blue flower and of some of its remarkable qualities, and he had requested a sample of despair. That is how you were of service to me, Doctor. when you conveyed that parcel to one of the many organizations which provided a facade for my father's interests. Naturally, he'd been excited by the flower and had persuaded a friend of his to experiment upon himself and discover the absolute limit of what a human body might endure. I understand the fellow was a little overzealous in his execution of the task.
His name was the illimitable Harry Dorno.
Yes, I believe that was the name of the gentleman in question.
Your father lied to me.
Of course. Yet he cloaked the lie with a truth and made it palatable. But you mustn't be too hard on yourself. You were young and he was wily. Now, as the blue flower set to work upon restoring me, it showed me the truth about the world. In my slumber, I was visited by the dark god of the tribe who told me what had to be done. I may have gone to Afghanistan as a mere salesman, but I returned to England a true missionary. My father was astonished to find me alive, yet he persuaded me to remain officially dead, sensing there would be certain advantages in my being able to carry out my duties in secret. We spoke often of the blue flower and of what we might achieve with it.
So you decided to try to grow it in England?
Father wished to see if it might be cultivated. And I should confess, I needed it also, for by that time I had come rather to rely upon it. The elegance of my form is maintained, you understand, only by constant doses of despair.
I presume that the village of Winflitten was chosen for its obscurity? You seduced poor Eliza Hindiclay and persuaded her to return home.
And it all worked, Mr. Holmes. The flower grew in great abundance. You met our test subject yourself. She had become a weapon.
She'd lost her mind.
I imagine Watson and I caused you a fair amount of frustration in that affair.
Oh, you came close to thwarting me, absolutely. After the flower was destroyed and its production and sale banned, Father gave up. You had come too close, he said, to discovering the truth.
Yet he lived on, still at the head of the company, while you, a dead man, had no official status. It must have chafed, Mr. Thrale. It must have rankled.
My father was a fool. He could not see what the flower might mean for the world.
And that is why you had him killed?
I took no pleasure in it. I killed him according to the customs of my tribe.
Tess Dorno must have seemed to you to be a gift from your God.
She was ideal. Beautiful, ruthless, and wholly insane. As with Eliza, I educated her, I taught her poetry, and I told her a version of the truth about her father. After that, she was willing to help me in any way I chose. Indeed, she went rather further than I'd imagined. It saddened me to have to silence her in the end.
You shot her before she could name you.
I suppose I must have. Inspector Wherry proved the perfect goat for it. I'd been in communication with him for years, posing as an informant, feeding him titbits of underworld gossip and information. That day, I came to him in secret and persuaded him that I could lead him to the killer. I promised to let him take all the credit so long as he followed my instructions to the letter, so long as he was at the tea rooms when I asked him to be, so long as he ran when I said that he should. He was always so easy to manipulate. Besides, his career was practically founded on my intelligence.
And you thought nothing of murdering him too, of making his death seem like a suicide?
It was a means to an end. He stood where he was required to stand, that is all.
To think that you were there, only inches away from us.
Galling, is it not? I confess myself surprised that you were so easily fooled by my sleight of hand. The disguise, the concealed weapon, the carefully planned ricochet. You must have been at a low ebb indeed to have missed it so completely.
I always had my suspicions. Suicide was too neat, too convenient.
Is that so? Nevertheless, you fled the field, did you not? And once Tess, Wherry, and my father were all removed, it was simple for me under a series of pseudonyms to take control of my father's companies. Nobody knew them better than I. The war was kind to us. I believe I am at present among the wealthiest men in Europe.
But why? What's it all been for? All the lives you've ruined. What do you want, man?
There's a car waiting for us outside. I thought we might take a drive together, and then I can show you exactly what it's all been for. tell me, do you like my city?
Your city?
My country also. I sponsored the Covertanian Revolution. You've met President Blent, sure. Surely you didn't believe him to be anything other than a puppet.
Where are all the people, Thrale? Why are your streets so deserted?
They're here, watching from behind their curtains, staying indoors, lying low. They are adjusting themselves at present to a new reality. I fear a good many of them may be in some pain.
You're a devil, sir.
And here we are.
What is this, Thrale? Looks like some sort of temple.
Come inside, gentlemen, and I shall tell you all.
Welcome to Covertania's finest achievement to date.
Holmes, what is this place? What's the purpose of all these tanks and pipes, all this steam?
It is some manner of water reclamation plant. You remember the boast in the Gazette? That the Covertanian government promised running water in the home of every citizen?
Hello, Mr. Holmes. Dr. Watson.
Mr. and Mrs. Blench, so glad you could join us.
I trust that my employer has enlightened you.
He is a very enlightening man.
I remain uncertain as to precisely why your services were required, madam.
His revolution would not have succeeded without me. I delivered the necessary change in regime.
I think, madam, that not for the first time you have overestimated your importance. I think you were intended first as a lure to bring the doctor and me here, and then as a means by which we might be run ragged.
I have to leave, Thrale. Our bargain's been honored. I'm needed elsewhere.
Stay a while, madam, at least to witness the finale.
I confess myself impressed, Mr. Thrale. This pump house of yours is a remarkable achievement. May I examine some of the machinery? I have an interest, strictly amateur, you understand, in engineering upon this scale.
You may examine whatever you please, Mr. Holmes. Indeed, it is my recommendation that you savor the experience. Let us stroll now. Let us gamble among the vats.
This is fascinating, Mr. Thrale. Almost fascinating. Thank you for allowing me to study your work at such close quarters.
I can't see what harm this does. Clean running water in every home. It'll do a great deal to stamp out disease. I certainly don't understand why so much blood's been spilt over it.
Mr. Thrale, you see, he's a very honorable man. He is proud and wise.
You would be correct, Watson, were it merely water that was being delivered into every home. Take this tank, for instance, a fine piece of engineering and surely the heart of the operation. Look closely, but do not, under any circumstances, drink of it. What do you think is within it?
Water, surely. Plain, ordinary water.
No, my dear Watson. Water tainted by despair.
Oh, well done! Yet, it's more than simply the old blue flower. It's something stronger, a more potent strain of my own breeding.
Then the entire country will be like Mrs. McLeese. Like you!
They'll be the greatest soldiers the world has ever seen, all but impervious to pain, able to return from the very brink of death. And more than that, all of them believers in my dark god of the plain. We shall roll over Europe like a wave, the perfect army of missionaries.
So that's your game, is it? Well, I want you to know something, Thrale.
And what might that be?
I'll do whatever it takes to stop you.
Oh, Doctor, isn't he sweet, Litzy?
Oh, so achingly sweet.
I'm afraid I can offer you only disappointment, Doctor. This water has been piped into the homes of every Covertanian for weeks now. The changes in them have begun.
This is monstrous. Holmes?
I suspected the truth as soon as we saw the fields of despair. When we passed through those deserted streets, I felt almost certain. Mrs. Kirbishley, You must surely be able to see that this is the most perverted scheme ever to be forced upon this gored continent. How can you stand to be part of it?
I leave the morality of such things to others. Thrale has paid me well, and I have expensive tastes. That is all I need to know. Now, if that was the final flourish, Mr. Thrale, I must insist that I depart. My new clients will be growing impatient.
Very well. You may leave.
Good day, then, gentlemen. Coming, Klitzy?
Yes. I am going now also. Good day to you, gentlemen.
President Blench,
Yes. How may I be assisting you?
do you not love your country, sir? How can you stand by and let this degenerate cuckoo rule over it? How can you allow him to treat your people as he has?
'Cause they ain't my people, Dr. Watson.
What? Holmes, if you wouldn't mind lifting your gaze from that tank for a moment, this man is not who he claims to be.
Reckon I'm flattered, Doctor, to have taken you in as I did.
Rest assured, sir, that you did not fool me. This is Alfred Morehouse, Watson, a former habitué of the music halls, now evidently fallen on hard times. Fashions change, and his style of acting has fallen somewhat out of fashion.
What? This is my greatest performance ever. Anyway, I'm not so sure I didn't take you in, Mr. Holmes. You're not at your best now, are you? Your eyesight's not what it was. I've seen them spectacles you wear. Goodbye, gents. Hope he makes it quick and painless.
Come along, Mr. Blench. Our new clients are not renowned for their patience.
Charming friends you have, Mr. Thrale. And now I imagine you must be desirous of settling the differences between us.
Oh, you think I intend to kill you? No, I only wanted you to see the whole truth. For your sake, we've been shadows, you and I, for so long. Who knows how things might have turned out had we been given each other's lives. I'd be the detective and the doctor, my Boswell. You'd be brilliant and bold and young again.
Then what do you want with us, man?
I want you to join us. I want you to bathe in despair and consume the blue flower. I wish you to stand at the head of my army. I want you to meet my dark god.
Then I fear I have disappointing news for you, Mr. Thrale. Your army is disbanded. Your country restored, and your cause has been utterly rejected.
Oh, this is unworthy of you, Holmes. What do you imagine you'll gain by such a bluff?
No bluff, I assure you. I am very much afraid that while I've been feigning interest in the machinery by which we are surrounded, I have in fact been decanting into your water supply an antidote to despair.
That is impossible. No such antidote exists.
It exists, sir. It is of my own creation. I have known for years that the blue flower holds many peculiar properties, and I have long worked upon a cure. I took a sample of the flower from Win Flitton, and I have spent much of my retirement in its study. The origin of the antidote may amuse you, Watson.
I can't see anything amusing in this situation. What is it?
Royal jelly, Watson. The antidote to despair is founded upon royal jelly. We owe it all to the bees.
No, it won't be enough. A few drops of your potion.
I left the particulars with my brother in London. He is even now overseeing its reproduction in bulk. The embassy, too, at Mycroft's instructions, have taken care never to drink the water. The British will restore the people of Covitania, and we shall leave to let them choose their own fate, free of interference.
Remarkable, Holmes.
Meretricious.
So that is the end. I never thought it should arrive with such stealth. I confess that even after all these years as your shadow, Mr. Holmes, I have grossly underestimated you. I raise my hands to you, sir. I'll surrender quietly without a fuss.
Very good. Then walk carefully towards us, Mr. Thrale. Make no sudden moves.
Of course, sir. I am quite in your hands now.
Holmes, he's got a gun!
Watson! As the body of my dearest friend fell to the ground, Christopher Thrale took to his heels and fled, losing himself almost immediately in the mazy thoroughfares of the plant. You will be gratified, I think, that I did not hesitate, but went immediately to the doctor. Watson! Watson, my dear fellow. I'm so sorry, I didn't see the gun! Stay still, old friend. I'll fetch help.
No, Holmes. No, I've lived a long life. You must stop Thrale. He cannot be allowed to escape again.
I won't leave you. You're badly injured.
Stop him, Holmes!
Watson, I fear that in all the time we've known one another, I have never made it sufficiently clear that...
Go, Holmes! Go!
There is little more to tell. I could not refuse my old friend's last request, and so I gave chase to Thrale. We were of the same age, yet he might have been generations my junior. He flew ahead of me in that peculiar place, ducking under pipes, weaving between vats and tanks, swarming above me on iron gantries. Yet his mind was unhinged, and he moved erratically while my fury gave me strength, speed, and resolution. At last, upon a platform high above the earth, I ran Christopher Thrale down. We faced each other over the deepest tank in the plant, the fathomless waters of which surged and seethed with despair.
If you'd only seen, Mr. Holmes, what I have seen, then you'd have done the same as I.
My friend lies bleeding beneath us. I've no taste for conversation.
Your friend is dying, Mr. Holmes. Only I am left for you now.
You have 10 seconds, Mr. Thrale, in which to surrender.
No surrender for me! Nil desperandum. I'm afraid you're going to have to kill me, and you'll have to do so with your bare hands. Are you ready for that? Can you bear the responsibility? Murder is corrosive to the soul, you know. It burns. Oh, Mr. Holmes, the things my God has shown me, the darkness that is coming to Europe again. All that madness. I might have stopped it. I could have saved us all if you'd only let me go.
I should prefer not to linger on what followed. I will tell you only that there was a struggle, and that just one of the combatants left the scene alive. Watson, are you still...
Still with you, Holmes. Is Thrale...
gone?
I'm glad. Glad that this wickedness has at last been plucked out by the root.
And so, my dear Mrs. Watson, it is my sad and solemn duty to have to inform you that your husband's injuries were severe indeed. The physicians do not expect him to survive. It was his final request that he be brought home to England and, dear lady, to you. I hope only that we reach you in time. He lies even now in the adjoining carriage. He has not spoken for a day and a night, and he seems very near to death. I understand if you do not wish to speak to me or to hear my story when we meet at Dover, but it is my hope that you will one day care to look at this poor manuscript of mine and understand how courageous was your husband, he who, to borrow a phrase of his own devising, shall ever be the best and the wisest man I have ever known. Yours, most sincerely, Sherlock Holmes. Who is it?
Order, sir.
Come in.
Very sorry to bother you, sir.
What do you want, man?
You ordered a bottle of claret. It's a good bottle, sir.
What are you talking about? I ordered no claret.
Didn't you, sir? Oh, but bless me, I could have sworn that you did. So yeah, I've brought us 2 glasses.
2 glasses? I call that very presumptuous of you.
Now, I'm not much of a wine-drinking man myself, sir. No, I'm no connoisseur, but I'm told it's from a very fine year. A juiced fine vintage. Yes, if it isn't from the year 1881.
1881, you say?
Oh, yes, sir. That's correct, sir. 1881, sir. The year when we first met.
Watson? Watson? I fear I've laid down my spectacles. Is that you beneath that absurd disguise?
I'm sorry, old man. It was irresistible. Just reward, I think, for the many times you've played the trick on me.
By all that's wonderful. How has this come to be?
Ah, you see, Holmes, but you do not observe. While you were chasing Thrale, I drank a little of the water which had been imbued by the blue flower. Only a very little, just enough to allow me to survive my wounds. Not enough to be visited by any god and feel like invading half of Europe.
My dear Watson, I have never been so pleased to see another face as I am now.
You know, it really is a very good wine, Holmes. Shall we open the bottle?
Capital, Watson. Capital.
Sir? Sir, can I ask your name?
Thrale. Christopher Thrale.
And have you stayed with us before, sir, here at the Orpheus Hotel?
Me? No, I've have not sought accommodation of any kind for years. I've been recuperating.
Systems found you. Oh, you've got the penthouse suite.
May I have my key now, please?
Key card, sir.
Of course. Key card.
Just ring down if you need anything.
Thank you, madam.
You can call me Judy.
Thank you, Judy.
This your first time in Washington, Mr. Thrale?
No, but it's been a while. And it is splendid to be back.